On today's show, cities with the fastest growing home prices in Massachusetts. I'm Melissa Ma with eXp Realty.
And I am Roger Lee with HLM Group.
And welcome to LEARNin Local Live.
Rely on work.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at LEARNin Local Live. We are very excited to have some awesome guest speakers with us today, and we are going to be talking about today's topic, which is the fastest home growing prices in Massachusetts.
How you doing, Melissa?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for today's show.
Yeah, me too.
A couple of great guests. I'm really interested in to hear what they have to say about this topic. You know, everyone is very concerned with the rising prices of homes and how they can afford one, even if you're a brand new first-time home buyer or a seasoned investor, right? So let's bring them on.
Yeah.
We have Charles Santiago.
And we also have Adam Chakowski.
Ruben, you're on mute.
You know what? I've done so many of these shows, Roger. You can make mistakes anytime. So thank you guys for hosting today's LEARNin Local live show. I just wanted to quickly introduce people who may have not tuned in or even seen us before. We're here to educate, empower, and inspire people who are buying real estate to make good decisions. Because in this day and age, with AI and deep fakes and fraud, more prevalent than it has ever been, it's really important to know that you're dealing with subject matter experts like you guys. Roger, obviously, as a property manager, Melissa as a buyer's agent. You guys know what to look for, and the whole point of us being live is to have these discussions with with consumers that might need that information. Again, the subject matter experts are all over Massachusetts doing all different things. I mean, Roger and both you guys know, obviously, that you buy a piece of property in Massachusetts, you're dealing with anywhere from 10 to 15 professionals right off the bat, right? From the agent to the lender, insurance, escrow, well, not escrow in Massachusetts, legal, CPA, maybe a contractor, maybe somewhat home inspector, appraiser. All these professionals are important, and it's important for everyone to know that they're real people just like you guys. So really appreciate you being on. Last thing I'll say is that I know I'm not going to be on the show, but I'm going to add my 2 cents. When I first bought my home, when me and my wife bought our first home in Massachusetts, it was in Weymouth, and it was in North Weymouth for $350,000, if you can believe it. Now everything in Massachusetts has a 1 in front of it, right? And it's so yeah. I'm aging myself a little bit, but it is what it is. So I'll let you guys have at it. Have an amazing show, and we'll see you soon. See you in the studio later. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ruben.
Right.
So I'm Roger Lee. My company is HLM Group. We are a property management company. We specialize in short-term rentals, aka Airbnbs, VRBO, and we help investors with their home when they're looking to put it on Airbnb. We help investors, and we manage them. We manage the guests, and we handle everything from A to Z.
And I'm Melissa Ma with eXp Realty. As Ruben mentioned, I do work heavily with buyers, especially first-time home buyers. I have a background in teaching, and I've been teaching for 10 years. So I do love educating my clients in making the best move when it comes to real estate.
So our first guest, we're introducing Charles Santiago.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Charles, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Charles from eXp Realty in Cambridge. We specialize in Somerville, Cambridge, Brookline, Brighton, and greater and metro Boston, as well as now in the Worcester area.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. And we also have Adam Chakowski, who is a business development manager.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm Adam. I'm based in Massachusetts, have been real estate investing over the last 4 years. Started with single family, also have properties out of state. So I've gotten to know a little bit more about outside markets, and then made the transition into commercial recently. So really been focusing specifically on commercial real estate, primarily senior living.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's really nice to meet both of you. And we're really looking forward to discussing today's topic because, as we all know, Massachusetts is a great state to live in. However, the prices are not always going to be great. We do notice that it is a higher priced market in Massachusetts. So we're really excited to dive in deeper with numbers and statistics.
How's everyone doing?
Good afternoon.
Did you guys all see this article about the 50 fastest growing cities and towns in Massachusetts? The majority of these have all gone up in the last 5 years, 30 to 50% in price.
Yeah, and these are towns that are further away from Boston. It seems like when it comes to these faster growing home prices in Massachusetts, it seems like these towns have bigger square footage, they have larger backyards, they have more bedrooms and bathrooms, and it seems like there's a little bit of a shift between living in the city where homes may be smaller and more close together versus living in these faster growing home priced cities.
Yeah, for sure. I think right after the pandemic, people realized they wanted more personal space.
Yeah, definitely. More personal space. And also there's been a shift in working from home. So a lot of clients are looking more into home offices and having a separate space for that. And
Adam, did
sorry.
you have anything to add about your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the interesting about Massachusetts is, if you look at a lot of the other things going on in the rest of the country, Mass is still one of the only states where you're seeing, offers go above ask, and there's really not much of a cool down compared to some other primary markets throughout the U.S. Obviously, from a consumer standpoint and just being a homestead buyer, that's challenging because in general, the salaries have not, and cost of living has not kept up with these prices. So it's something, at some point, something has to give. And from a investor standpoint, you're getting to a point where a lot of deals just don't pencil out, even if you're talking like residential, commercial, short-term rentals. A lot of these are getting really tough to make work. So you're starting to see a lot of creativity where Massachusetts is instituting that ADU rule. You're starting to see a lot more co-living and pad split be a thing. So whether you're buying as a homestead or being an investor, you really have to get creative in this market.
For sure. I'm really curious to know that since you're doing so much senior living investments now, how has the baby boomers, they need to sell their home, and shouldn't we have an influx of supply if they're moving to a senior living facility?
I think some of the challenges you're seeing with that is, number one, the age expectancy is starting to increase. So, the good thing is people are living longer. The challenge with the housing is there's really limited places to go. What happened was when senior living facilities were being built, a lot of them stopped being built about 15 years ago. So similar to things you've seen on like the multifamily side and other living, they just have not started to produce new builds because of the cost. So you're left with the facilities that are already existing, that are already aging, that are going to have to be put out of commission at some point. So there's a lot of things I think that are affecting that, and there's going to be that certain demographic of seniors and adults that are going to have a hard time parting with their home, and their children, their loved ones having a hard time realizing that, hey, it may be time to put mom, dad, or grandmother in some type of care facility. So I think there's a lot of things affecting that, and it's getting really tough, and I don't know what exactly that answer is to solve that.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of number crunching, especially in Massachusetts, because the margins are so slim. So, like you said, being creative and really having a strong strategy will help you win deals in real estate in Massachusetts. And actually, I have a question for Charles. Some of these fastest growing towns in Massachusetts are also sometimes the most established, places like Wellesley, Arlington, or even Lexington. What do you think makes them so appealing, but beyond just their reputation or their price?
Per capita and square footage, and obviously school systems. I mean, Wellesley, Arlington, Lexington, they are all in and around Boston, but they're predominantly wealth-based. If you look at these towns that Wellesley has Wellesley College, Arlington is adjacent to Cambridge and Somerville, and Medford, West Medford specifically, which are really nice areas for people to live that don't have to drive into Cambridge, they don't have to drive into Somerville. They can just stay there. And obviously Wellesley is just a completely different area, that has a lot to offer with the colleges, with, just the wealth that's in that specific town. Lexington is outside of Arlington. And then you have Burlington, and you have all these other towns. In my opinion, school systems, I think that they're among the best. If you look at all the Indian and Asian communities that do travel from out of state to come into here, they're asking about Lexington, they're asking about Wellesley, they're asking about Cambridge, they're asking about Brookline, they're asking about Belmont. These are all areas that are just outside of the city that are lucrative for people to have space. They don't have to leave 45 minutes to travel from the city, which is just on the other side of the river, the Charles. They can easily drive into the city, work, and then come back home. And the school systems are top notch. If you look at the grading websites that people use as parents, they check these, and these are all established communities that have great school systems. And for business, people have the availability of going into the city without having to travel far. For me to get to Harvard Square, it's about 10 minutes driving. I can jump on the Red Line, I can jump on Alewife and Fresh Pond, I can go to Harvard Square, or take a little bit longer, get on the Green, I can travel to Brookline, or I can, bounce back and forth really easily, really simply. So in in that regards for location, price, and condition. You're getting the square footage, you're getting the availability of having your family in a in a in a neighborhood and in a specific town that's more of a small town feel, even though it's just outside of the city.
Yeah, those are really good points. And I'm sure a lot of people consider those factors when they're looking to where to move to, right?
With or without kids. With kids, they're already thinking about that. Without kids, they're already thinking about that 5 to 10 years down the line.
For sure. And then for me, like with young children, that was our top priority: school systems and the community we would be moving into, right? Because there's a saying, it takes a village to raise your children, right? And you want to be in those towns where everyone is like kind of have the same mindset with the same sports, that you want to play, and like all those activities. It's crazy, like how many sports we have to do with as parents now.
I mean, you're traveling a lot. You're going between baseball, basketball, field hockey. You got your piano lessons. You got your restaurants and dining. You got your local churches. You got your specific cuisines. So these are things.
I feel like we can have another show just on that topic alone, right?
It's all what people are looking for, not just the house. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's great. But also you have to consider the taxes that people are paying in these towns, in these cities. Why are they paying so high in taxes? Why are they willing to pay? Well, in the grand scheme of things, that they're making $1 million, it's not going to really, in terms of gross commission income and what they do in their respective fields, it's not going to be such of a big deal because they are paying into the school system. They're paying into the utilities. They're paying into a lot of these things that are highly sought after. And 1 turns into 5, turns into 10. Hey, let's move our whole family here. Let's get our friends here. And it goes from there and there and there.
Yeah, and Agreed. I think that happens a lot. It's, with the word of mouth and just having a familial sense, more and more people end up moving into the community, and then it builds a bigger community as well. So thank you for sharing your insight, Charles. We really appreciate it. I have a question for Adam, actually. So from your experience in commercial finance, do you see any type of parallels? Because, as we mentioned, as real estate agents, you do have to strategize, right? And you do have to crunch those numbers. So do you notice any parallels on how investors assess value in equipment or business assets or things like that, and how homeowners should think about real estate today?
Sure. I think it's a great question. I think the biggest difference is, you're going from a totally different mindset. From a business mindset, you need to be looking at finance as more of a leverage standpoint, right? It's what I consider to be good debt. It's debt to help you grow, to help you manage your cash flow. It helps you to get, assets that are going to make you money. So I think when you're looking at that, what's the cost of doing that type of business? So when you're looking at it from like an investor standpoint, from a business standpoint, if I'm purchasing equipment, what's that going to do for my business? What type of return? Don't just look at the rate. And I guess that correlates with your home where, yes, I understand rates went back up. That shouldn't pause you from buying if you can afford it, because we all know what's going to happen is if rates come back down, guess what happens? The price goes up. If the price goes down, the rates go up. So regardless, you're going to be paying for it one way or another. So I think that correlates as a homeowner to not always be focused on rate, to understand that, hey, you're going to be getting appreciation over time. If you pick the right market, location's always key. And then on the financing side, you can always refinance if the rates drop. So I think it's one of those things, they always say the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. And it's the same thing with anything else. So people are always saying, I'm going to wait. There is no such thing as a perfect time to me as a homeowner or as an investor.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when I'm working with my buyers and we're submitting offers, one of the biggest questions I ask them is, how would you feel or what are your thoughts on the property, or what are your thoughts if we lost this offer? And a lot of the times that's when they start considering, okay, do we go a little more? Do we offer a little more in terms of the price? Do we change our terms a little bit to make it more ideal for the seller? That way it's a win-win situation and they can get into a neighborhood or a community that they really enjoy.
Right. And I think that's tough too, because with what you do, it's more of an emotional impact, right? That's going to be their homestead. That's going to be where they raise their kids, send them to school, whatever, have nice dining, like Charles mentioned. From the investment standpoint, we're looking at it from a different lens. When we assess property value or the valuation of like commercial, you're going off what cap rates are, what other assets have traded at, net operating income, value add situations. That's really how you're kind of assessing the value of those types of investments, as opposed to like on the single family or homeowner side.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Adam, for all of your insight as well. And now we're going to move into the LEARNin Local opportunities. All right, so after we talked about, all these towns with the rising home prices, it always makes me think, because me being a public school educator, I always think, how do we make this equitable or even reachable for or affordable for other families as well? Because I think school districts and having a good school district is very important. And how do we offer more to our community? So I guess as prices rise in high demand areas, Charles, how do you help your buyers find alternatives that match their lifestyle goals or their community values?
Buyers are they're a part of my business, but they're not a major focus in what we do. We specialize in multifamilies. We specialize in working with sellers. But when I do work with buyers, it's really simple. I mean, it's rocket science in terms of how to figure out how to help a family move, whether they're moving internationally or domestically. It's always tied into the biggest things, which are work, travel, family, location to certain things that are really important to them. So for example, if someone wants to move into the Back Bay or South End, there's a specific reason. Or if someone wants to move in here because they're working at Pfizer in Cambridge, makes sense to somewhat be close, depending on their situation and finances. In my opinion, finding out about your buyers and asking them lots of questions, just like any other person, instead of talking about yourself like a lot of agents do. They talk about how great they are. They talk about all these other things, which means nothing, in my opinion, because you don't really show your value. What matters the most in how I coach my clients is that I coach them. And I understand the process. I know it inside and out. I also know the listing side inside and out. And I also understand the financing side very well. Not entirely well like the mortgage brokers do, but I know enough that I can be dangerous. But in that regards, really asking your clients or just the people that you're working with, whether you're selling or buying, you ask them questions and you ask them tailored questions to guide them. And if they don't know, you need to ask more questions, and then you'll get the answers that you're looking for.
Great. Thanks for all that input, Charles. Adam, how do you help your buyers?
You mean like on the investment side? So like for us, I guess because we're buying, so we're investing. So I think, from an entrepreneurial side, when you're thinking about the investment side, the numbers have to work at the end of the day, especially, with what we're doing with like senior living. So we're purchasing facilities where we're also bringing in other people's money, for capital raising and syndications. So you really have a big duty to protect other people's money while making sure the deal works. You really can't get emotional about a deal as an investor, especially when, things start to tighten on the debt side. You have to make sure the numbers work. You can't force numbers that aren't there. I think that goes back to being creative. There's ways to get creative on the investor side that I think can translate to the homeowner side. For instance, when it comes to creative financing, some of our single families we own by doing a seller finance note or taking over the existing mortgage and what's called subject to. Now, with that, it's easier said than done. You want to make sure you're protected. There's measures in place. The right paperwork's done to do that. But it's a way to get creative and get yourself into a property. We have those properties we have were on 4.2 rates when the rates were 6.5 for bank rates. So it's a great way to add to your portfolio, to get in, and find a solution that results in a win-win for everybody involved. And I will say this about the creative side with financing: just because the rate's attractive, you still have to make sure all the numbers work. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should always do it. You really have to make sure your numbers are there.
For sure. I think it's a little different for me on perspective. A lot of people want to be on the Cape, for example, but Cape houses are expensive, and your rental income most likely won't make you any cash flow. And we say, you'll be lucky if it pays for itself. Like that's what you should aim for. Like,
Right.
And that investment, right, is like you kind of balance it with how you value your time and enjoyment in that home. So it's not purely as an investment, because you're going to be using it for yourself, your family, and friends. So it's kind of like a give and take, and how each like investor kind of values that time.
And I agree with you, Adam. You did mention subject to as a strategy, and I think that that's a very crucial strategy, especially in Massachusetts now with the growing home prices. It's not as common in Massachusetts. It's a little more difficult to secure a property subject to, but it's not impossible. And I think with the right education and with the right information, we can make it possible for future home buyers.
Absolutely. And I think as realtors too, I think that's a tool that a lot of realtors could have in their tool belt to add on more sales for themselves too, and when times get tougher.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this insight. We are going to move on, I believe, Roger, to the local network. Awesome. And as Ruben mentioned before, the whole point of this LEARNin Local Live is to empower, educate, and inspire with clients, whether they are investors, home buyers, sellers. We are trying to create a community where we can rely on each other, where we could support each other with our businesses, and where we can really provide true insight for people to rely on, so that we build a community of trust.
Yeah, for sure. So everyone, tune in weekly and listen to our topics and meet some of our guests that we have lined up in the coming weeks. We are going to take next week off for the July 4th holiday. So we have good things coming the week after.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Adam and Charles, for joining us today and providing your insight and your expertise in both the investor realm and in the real estate agent realm as well. So thank you for watching, and please stay tuned next time.